So the next topic that that I'm going to cover is attitudes. So what are attitudes? Attitudes are evaluative statements or judgments concerning objects, people, or events. And attitudes has got three components. You can number them. This is number one, cognitive component, which is the opinion or belief segment of the attitude. What a person believes or the person's opinion towards any object or people or events. So let's give an example of, say, the university cafeteria. The university cafeteria. So your cognitive component, what is your opinion regarding the cafeteria? You might have positive or negative opinions. You might think it is, on the positive side, perhaps it is fairly clean. Maybe on the negative side, maybe you feel that it doesn't have the dishes that you want, that you like. That's just your belief or your opinion. Okay? And the second one is the affective component, the emotional or feeling. So what is your feeling towards this cafeteria? Maybe the cleanliness, it gives you a pleasant feeling, and then maybe the lack of choice, it gives you a negative feeling towards that cafeteria. And you don't have the appetite to eat because it doesn't have the food that you like. And the third component is the behavioral component, the intention to behave in a certain way. So having the cognitive, the opinion or belief, and having that affective, which is a feeling, what is now your intention of behaving? Do you intend to go to the cafeteria or not? So it's, of course, intention to behave. Whether you actually behave or not, whether you actually go there or not, could be the result of other forces as well. Like perhaps now you can't go because you're in the class, isn't it? So it's always the intention to behave, intention. So that's the general definition of attitudes. So do not confuse yourself with the layperson's description or use of attitude, like for example, Mr. X has got a bad attitude, Mr. Y has got good attitude. These are not really the proper use of the word attitude. Attitudes are just the opinions, feelings, and the intention to behave towards objects, people, or things. So it can be cafeteria, it can be the course or the university, anything. Okay, what about, perhaps since this is cause and organizational behavior, we need to look at attitudes at the workplace. Attitudes at the workplace. So the first one is job involvement, which is basically your attitude towards your job. Job involvement, the degree to which a person identifies with his or her job, actively participates in it, and considers his or her performance important to self-worth. And compared to organizational commitment, the degree to which an employee identifies with a particular organization and its goals and wishes to maintain membership in the organization. So these are slightly different attitudes. So if you want to know whether the person has got a higher job involvement or higher organizational commitment, you can perhaps ask the person, can you tell me about yourself? A person who has high job involvement will say, I am a lecturer, or I am a lawyer, or I am a doctor. That's a person with high job involvement. They identify themselves with the job that they do. Whereas a person with high organizational commitment, if you ask them, tell me about yourself, he or she will say, I work at Abu Dhabi University or ADNOC or whatever organization, whatever bank. So they identify themselves with the place that they work in. That's organizational commitment. They're more, They feel more attached to the organization. Yeah? So that's essentially the difference between the two. A person with high job involvement, they identify a lot with a job. They sometimes, you know, when they talk about their jobs, and they, even weekends, or they do their job or think about the job. Now, what is the most often studied attitude at work? It's job satisfaction. And job satisfaction is an attitude about your work and various aspects of your work. Right? So, if I can give you a list, job satisfaction is basically an attitude about the job itself or the work itself. What else do you think is important for job satisfaction? Your what?
Environment.
Yeah, your environment, which if you break it down, could consist of your what? Your pay, your salary, remuneration, whatever you call it. Promotion. Okay, we'll talk security. Promotion. Let me give you the list of what is this, and then we can add to this list later on. Okay, pick work, pay, promotion, supervision, and your co-workers. Okay. These are the five most commonly studied components of job satisfaction. Now, do you think that satisfied people are more productive?
Yes.
Always? Not always, according to the research. According to the research, satisfied workers are not necessarily more productive. They can be in some cases, but in some cases, the relationship is negative. Think about it. For some people, in some cases, they are satisfied because they don't have to work hard. And that's why in some companies, in some situations, the relationship is negative and some is positive. So overall, when somebody did a meta-analytic study, meaning they combine all the studies together, they found that satisfied workers are not necessarily more productive. There's a non-significant correlation. But the question is, why is it then that organizations are concerned that their employees are at least not dissatisfied? Because studies have shown that there is a relationship between dissatisfaction and absenteeism. Absenteeism and turnover, which is people resigning. So people who are not happy, they they find excuse not to turn up for work, and also they are more likely to resign from the organization. And as you know, resignations, I mean, if people resign after less than a year, then it's a great cost to the organization to recruit more people, retrain, and so on. Right? So that's why organizations, even though they realize that satisfied workers are not necessarily more productive, but they still take steps to ensure that at least there is an acceptable level of satisfaction among the workforce, is because, you know, dissatisfied employees are more likely to quit, and also more likely to be absent from work, also more likely to engage in disruptive behaviors like fighting or sabotage or stealing equipment or damaging equipment. So as I mentioned, people who are the responses to job dissatisfaction, people who are dissatisfied, they tend to start from here, and then here, and then here, and then here. So the first stage is voice, which is active and constructive. So if somebody is dissatisfied about the promotion prospects, for example, then they can voice it up. That means they can make a verbal complaint about the lack of promotion or the unfair promotion method. Then they go to this stage which is loyalty, constructive and passive. Why is passive? Is because this person is no longer doing anything. They, after voicing out, they wait and still remain loyal in the organization. They wait hoping for things to change. And if things don't change, they'll go to the next stage, which is neglect, passive but destructive. They start neglecting their work. And they probably look for other jobs elsewhere. And when they finally do, they exit the organization. So there's destructive and active. So these are the cycle, the stages that people go through in job dissatisfaction. So that's all this just explain what I've just explained. And the last slide here, I think in this chapter, we have organizational commitment we talked about earlier. Now, there's another one, organizational citizenship behavior, or OCB, which is slightly different. The key word here is behavior, organizational citizenship behavior. This is a behavior. So basically, people with high OCB are people who, because of their feelings of loyalty and love towards the organization, they behave in ways which are good for the organization, and actually they are beyond the job description. For example, like say a lecturer who has high OCB. Lecturers' duties, what are lecturers' duties? Basically to teach students, to participate in some committees, and to do research. That's basically the job description of lecturer. It's not the job description of lecturer to teach new faculty members, to teach new lecturers. It's not really their job. But they might do that if they have high OCB. Similarly, like promoting the DBA course, for example, or any course in the university. Not strictly speaking their job, but they might do that, again, because they have high OCB. So OCB is a behavior which is beneficial to the organization and which is actually outside of the job description. And what is the relationship between OCB and satisfaction? Well, basically, satisfied employees who feel fairly treated by and are trusting of the organization are more willing to engage in OCBs, which are behaviors that go beyond the normal expectations of their job. I have a student who graduated with a PhD, one of my students who I supervised. She looked at the relationship between human resource policies and OCB of frontline hotel staff in entire Malaysia. And she found that there was a positive correlation between the HR practices, like the fairness of the HR practices, and OCB. So is having high OCB valuable for the organization? It is, definitely.